Page 18, jazz sequences. I have a note at the bottom about sequences. A sequence is simply a pattern of notes. I don't know how long, it's usually short. And typically it will go up or down the keyboard. So let's look at this piece in the right hand. At the beginning you have these notes. That could be a sequence. It's a musical motif. It's an idea, an expression of music. Well, go on. The last measure. It's the same musical idea. It's just gone down one note. Keep going. This is a sequence of notes. We call it descending sequence because it's going down, because you can have ascending and descending. Just, you'll recognize these things. Many times in piano, actually most of the time in piano, when we find these sequences, we will typically finger them the same. So if I finger the first one here, I'm going to finger all the others in the same fingers in the right hand. The third line, it starts out the same and then it changes, so it's not exactly the same sequence. And then it goes up, starting with the last measure of the third line. It's here. We're back to the sequence. Now we're going to go down again. Top of page 19, still going down. And I'm fingering each one the same. Isn't that wonderful? Now, second line on page 19. Second measure, you're here. Next measure. This is another sequence, a descending sequence. I'm fingering each one the same. And that's the idea. Let's look at the left hand. Yes, sort of, it got its own sequence going on too. So you're starting here at fourth finger. Using a light finger staccato here. I'm ending on fourth finger on that C, and I'm using fourth finger again on the next one. The idea is it's another pattern of that what I just played with, one note down. I want to use the same fingering. So I started on fourth finger at the beginning. So when I do the sequence next, I'm going to start on fourth finger. But it's staccato. You can move down one note because it's staccato, right? You got time. Again. Both hands are doing this. That's cool. That's kind of nice. It says jazz. There's a style in jazz, blues, and swing. It's just standard. When you have eighth notes, you automatically swing the eighth notes, or you play the eighth notes uneven. They didn't put anything in here about it. Don't care. They could have. They didn't. Okay. But if it's a jazz, if they want to call this a jazz piece, then when we get to over on page 19, second line, here on the second measure and so forth, I'm going to swing those eighth notes. Uneven. In other words, the counting isn't 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. The counting is 1 and 2 and 3. If you swing the counting too, because it's a felt thing. It's not dotted rhythm, it's not triplet. You feel it. It's somewhere in between. You just have to feel it. Sometimes the short notes will be shorter than others because you're feeling it. How do you feel on it? And that's jazz. The end of the fourth line on page 19. You see the DC, I'll sign, then play coda. All they need is the DC, I'll sign. They don't need the then play coda part. They're helping you out. DC means go back to the beginning. That's fine. We can do that. The sign, the circle with the crosshairs, is at the end of the first line on page 19. So you're going to play to there and then immediately jump down to the coda. The coda is the last line on page 19. So we're just going to do that. Now at the beginning of this piece on page 18, there's a note underneath the allegro moderato. I'll get to that in a minute. Second time, both hands 8 VA. So we're starting out here, but after the DC, we're coming up here. We're just pretending middle C went up an octave is all. And we're going to play all of that, both hands up an octave until we get to the coda, And you see the coda, it's both hands 8VA, but it's only for the first measure. That little dotted line is just for the first measure, and then there's an LOCO. That means local, which means play it where it's written. So the first measure you're up here, here, and then the second measure you're here. The left hand isn't moving far because the notes are written down here, but you're playing them up here and then here. It's a little tricky, but if you work on the hand motions of when you got to go where, smooth all that out because the beat's got to go on. There's a retardando at the end. I'm going to ignore that because I'm going to play with a metronome. There's a fermata at the end. I'm going to hold, I just double the value. I'm going to hold 4 counts. Pedal-wise, there's a little bit of pedal, not much. Over on page 19, you see third line down, one measure has a pedal. The next line, the last measure has a pedal. And in the coda, the last measure has a pedal. As far as I'm concerned, you could play this without pedal. I like it better without pedal because the pedal messes up the phrases. For instance, in the third line down on page 19, the right hand is here, and then you have a phrase. I like to have a little silence between the first 2 notes. If I pedal it, I don't get that. It covers it up. At the coda, the last measure, they're saying pedal the rest. I disagree. I like to hear the rest. So if I pedal it, I'm only pedaling the half note. I'm going to give myself 4 counts. I'm not using pedal on this. I don't like the idea of using the pedal. 1, 2, ready, go.